Women of Reddit, what's your story about a creepy guy following you? I had a guy get off the subway and follow me off. I was on the phone with my parents at the time, but regardless of that, he kept telling me I was beautiful and trying to talk to me, and he insisted he would walk me home. I said no, but he kept insisting, which made me worried, so I said I had to stop in a store for cat food. I then called my boyfriend from within the store and he came to get me. We saw the guy cross the street and get back on the subway, just proving he got off the subway specifically to follow me. When I was 16 working at a grocery store, we had a secret shopper who told me he was 18. We talked on Facebook until I realized, another coworker told me, he was 24. I confronted him and he said the age of consent in our state was 16 anyway, so it was fine. I couldn't tell my dad because he would flip out. So for 2 weeks at work I had to deal with him following me everywhere I went, and he would text me non-stop. If I blocked him, he made another account. I went to management and they immediately fired him, and now he is never allowed in our store again. Still grosses me out to this day. I was legitimately stalked my first semester of college. The guy was in my same English class. Second or third week we talk a little after class and find out that we live in different dorms, but in the same complex. Now the dorms were towers, 17 floors with 35 or so rooms per floor. Huge buildings. One day, him and his roommate show up at my door, except I never told him which floor I lived on. So he had to go to each floor and try to find me. He then proceeds to come into my room while my roommate and I are doing work and lays on the floor. Finally his friend tells him he's being weird and that they should go. Then he started just sitting outside my dorm room. I would come back from class and he would be there, just sitting and waiting. He would leave notes on the whiteboard that he just wanted me to read his essay for class. He just wanted to talk to me. Why wouldn't I give him a chance? He then started sending me creepy song lyrics over MySpace about how he was going to burn down the dorm to get me to have to leave my room. I printed those up and got my English teacher involved, a lovely grad student who luckily was a women's advocate. She got her supervisor involved. My teacher started walking with me to my next class, all the way on the other side of the very large campus. He followed us the whole way, even when we made detours to the bathroom or to get coffee. Finally the teacher had us write an ode to our favorite study spot. Kinda weird, but whatever. He wrote about sitting outside my door, how he felt powerful when he knew I was trapped inside, and even put my room number and other identifiable stuff in it. That ended up getting turned over to the university, in addition to the song lyrics, and there was a whole hearing, with myself, my roommate, and some others having to give statements. Unfortunately they never told me what happened, but he wasn't at the school the next semester. The next year, his roommate happened to be in one of my classes. Very first day he comes up to me and says that there's no hard feelings for what you did to my friend. Some guy on a small motorized bicycle, no idea what it's called, coming up to me and my friend as we left the fair. He asked if we wanted to party. I said we can't, we're 12. He didn't care I guess and asked our names, and my friend said, I don't want to tell you. And that's when I realized I could just say no. I'll also never forget the time I was chased, full tilt running, and narrowly escaped because I ran into a huge beefy dude who scared my pursuer. Which is kinda wild, but even more wild was how my 2 male roomies didn't care at all when I told them once I got home. It's made me feel unheard. It's deeply embittered me. I was walking through the downtown area of our city, and I accidentally made eye contact with this dude who was clearly unhinged. He started following us, muttering to himself about how he wanted to take me home. He followed us for a few blocks before he got bored and wandered off. I was terrified. My husband didn't notice the guy until I told him after the dude left. I worked at a department store. I was in customer service and cash checks. There was this guy who would wait until I was available just to cash his check and talk. He would try to hold personal conversations in the line, and wanted to know my work schedule and where I lived. If I covered a break on a register, he would find me and get in a long line just to buy a Pepsi and see me. If he saw me anywhere in the store, he would sneak up behind me and tickle my ear. I was very uncomfortable. I told my supervisors and they would intervene whenever he came in. One day I was leaving the store late. I got off at 11 p.m. As I was walking out, he approached me from the side of the building in a shadowy area and tried to grab me. Luckily I walked outside at the same time the truck boys were on a smoke break. They grabbed him and told me to run and call the cops. I don't know what he could have or would have done to me had I been alone. This one probably isn't as bad as other people's, but here we go. Mandatory mobile disclaimer. In my freshman year of high school, I walk to my regular lunch table spot and there's a kid we don't know sitting there. No biggie, I assume he's friends with somebody else at the table. He strikes up a conversation with me, saying I look familiar. He asks my grade, my middle school, and elementary school. We went to the same middle school, but he was a senior so we wouldn't have gone at the same time. He asks about elementary school, so I give my school and we went to different schools, and I talk about how crappy mine was and he says, "Oh, can I give you a hug because you went to a crappy elementary school?" I'm caught off guard so I give him a hug anyway. I ask around the table and no one knew him. He keeps showing up for a few days but we ignore him and only speak to him when spoken to, leaving a seat between us, etc. But the really creepy part is at one point he came to my history class for yearbook interviews, and wanted a boy and a girl. I was literally the only kid with my hand down and he chose me and my male friend. He takes us out in the hall separately, my friend first. He says we need to do 2 interviews with different endings, one with a handshake and one with a hug. I do both, not knowing better. First thing I did when I came back to class was ask my friend if he did the hug. He said no. After chatting with my friends about it for a bit, I remember yearbook kids can access schedules. I only gave this kid my first name too. I tell my history teacher about it and he said he'll email this kid's yearbook teacher. Kid left me alone after that, but I still made my friend pretend to be my boyfriend when I saw him around. I've been followed, grabbed, yelled at, etc. Sometimes it ends in a nice interaction. One dude for instance just told me I looked like Marilyn Monroe and then walked away. For the record, I do not look like her, but usually it's super creepy. The first time was the worst. I was 14 and wearing this pinstripe suit that I loved. It was brand new and I thought I looked so cool. I went to the grocery store with my mom and noticed this dude in his 30s following me through the store. Like, everywhere I went there he was. My mom sent me to get something from a separate aisle and this dude just pounced. Walked up to me and started saying vulgar things. I was a shy but weirdly assertive kid, so in a moment of panic I just turned to him, yelled no as loud as I could, and then speed walked back to my mom. I told her what happened and we just left the store. It totally shattered my confidence and I never wore that suit again, because I didn't want creepy dudes to keep following me. It didn't work of course, but I was young and didn't know that what happened wasn't my fault. I was studying abroad in Eastern Europe as a junior in college. One weekend myself and 2 other girls in the program drove to the capital of Slovakia, Bratislava, to spend the day. We were strolling around the most touristy area of the city on a summer evening. It was peak dinner time in a walking district, so there were lots of people about except on these little connecting side streets that would be mostly empty. While taking one such connecting street we were excitedly gabbing away, when all of a sudden I got that cliché but totally real feeling of hair standing up on the back of your neck. I suddenly realized there was a man walking behind us. He wasn't obviously suspicious, but he was only about 10 feet back and I think my subconscious noticed he was maintaining that distance, rather than trying to get around us. There was plenty of room, or us outpacing him. My fight or flight kicked in but my gut said to be cool. I have no idea what one of my friends was saying but I completely cut her off with a "Hey guys, actually let's go over here," and immediately turned a 180 back the way we had come. I didn't look at my friends or anything so don't know their reaction but they went with it. As soon as we turned around the man stopped. He was close enough the 3 of us had to split to get around him, and as we did he just stood there. Then after we passed, he turned around on the spot and started walking behind us again. The street led into a very large, open square with a coffee shop nearby. Thankfully the shop had a little outdoor seating and an empty table, so I speed walked up and plopped myself down facing out as my friends quietly took a seat, too. To my astonishment, the man continued walking toward us, maintaining eye contact with me as he did so. It was at this point my friends noticed the man. My heart was pounding furiously thinking there was going to be a confrontation, when at the last second he just passed by. The whole encounter was less than a minute, but I was shook, worried we had just dodged a taken storyline. A young waitress came out and thankfully she spoke enough English for us to explain sort of what happened. She allowed us to sit a few minutes without buying anything to recover and make sure we didn't notice more funny business around us. We were on guard the rest of the night, but nothing else happened and we never saw the man again. Part of me wonders if I was just being a paranoid weirdo, but the feeling that something was wrong was so random and powerful I can't blow it off as imagination. Unfortunately we were broke and had to sleep in our car that night. Suffice it to say we did not sleep well. One time I was walking in my neighborhood. It was evening in the early fall and I living up north the sun sets faster than you'd expect. A car pulled up next to me and said, "Hey, need a ride or something?" I said no and kept walking, but he rolled next to me trying to get my attention, until a car pulled up behind him and he had to drive off. I thought I was in the clear, so I kept hurrying home, but he just pulled around the block and rolled next to me again, this time saying things like, "Come with me and I wanna freak you." I was 14 or so and didn't have a phone, and couldn't see anyone else outside to go to for help, so I kept walking until another car made him pull away again. Worried he'd come back, I dashed down a side road and hid between some cars for maybe 10 minutes, hoping he'd give up and I could make it home. I was the kind of kid that always carried a pocket knife, so I opened it, slipped it up my sleeve in case I needed it in a hurry. If I was smart, I would have picked a random house and gone there for help, but the closed doors seemed just as scary as the guy in the car. Eventually I started heading home again and was half a block from my house, when guess who pulled up, but he didn't have more than a couple seconds before he had to move on for another car. I waited until he had rounded a corner before I ran the rest of the way home, and got the door safely locked behind me.